I remember when you first came on board, you and I had some very honest conversation about changes that had to be made in the organization in 2008, 2009. And it was people. We had some staffing changes that we had to make in different departments, and it was not easy. The conversation, I feel terrible in one way because you came in and you and I decided a few months in that some changes had to be made, and you were the COO president, and ultimately you were the one that had to deliver the bad news. And that had to be pretty rough.
It's hard, but again, you and I again align on this. But my take is as long as you give people an opportunity to rise to your expectations, then it's fair because we're in business together to make a living. Everybody wants to make a living through their job. Hopefully, they want to make the world a better place. But not everybody is a perfect fit for every circumstance. And so as companies grow, the roles change, the needs change. And so you want to give everybody an opportunity to rise to the level of expectations. You want to make sure those expectations are clear. And then if they don't work out, then it's for their best because they would be increasingly uncomfortable in that environment, in those roles. And sometimes that does mean you have some tough conversations. So, but I do think that was a major pivotal point for I-9 Sports. But at the same time, it helped us galvanize an understanding of who some of the A players were that you already had in the organization. And, as an example, Kim Armelino, at the time, head of finance, but, saying head of finance doesn't capture it all because talk about a generalist. She was, up till my coming in, kind of your COO because she was doing all kinds of things for you and continues to be with I-9 Sports today as a major player. So, she was, I think, your very first hire.
Yes, I hit the lottery. I hit the lottery on the very first employee hire. Kim started actually before I-9 Sports. She started when I was running my adult men's softball league, ABA, and when she moved to the Brandon area too. So it was, she's been with us since before the beginning.
Yeah, and Kim has continued to be what I'll call a utility player because she thinks beyond her own role,
Yes.
and those kinds of people are invaluable to a startup and invaluable to a company of our size. And we're not a large company by any means, but she would laugh if she heard me say this, but she's kind of like the Swiss Army knife of business because she can do just about anything. So those kinds of players who have the will to improve and look at things differently and have the work ethic, they're invaluable.
Yeah, what made Kim different is her willingness to adapt and grow and change as the company grew. Most people, in my experience, have been, they kind of come into a company, this is who I am, this is what I do, here's what I don't do. And Kim was never like that, even from the very, very beginning. She was always about growing and changing because she was able to adapt to the ever-growing company. It led her to go from really an hourly part-time person when we were running ABA softball to the CFO now, correct?
Yeah, essentially. She doesn't have the CFO title, but essentially she's playing that role.
Yeah. It's all about the people. We know that. I want to switch gears and talk about, economic cycles because we know that what we experienced during the Great Recession is an economic downturn, which we know is inevitable again, right? There's going to be, at some point, the economy is going to change. And I thought it might be a good time, since we have emerging franchisors that are listening to this, for them to hear about what advice we would give to them on how to get through it. Because you and I had this philosophy, I'll never forget. We always said we refuse to participate in the recession. And it wasn't like we were going to ignore the fact that there was a recession, but we were going to ignore the news and listening to the negative media. And we weren't going to crawl under a rock and hide until they told us it was good. We were good and ready to be able to, safe to get out from under the rock. We worked on things like the infrastructure. We focused on growth. And the other thing Brian, if you remember, we didn't do is franchisors back in that time period, they ran to what they thought were greener pastures. Remember, everybody was talking about going international. We can't sell a franchise here in the US, so we're going to go international. And you and I didn't do that. So I'd love to hear your take on back then. What were your thoughts? And then also, what advice would you give to an emerging franchisor on the things they should do and not do in the next economic downturn?
Yeah, great question. That's a loaded one. I think the first one is to focus on what you can control. I learned a long time ago. I mean, one of the things in a public company is you have these things called analyst calls where the senior management has to get on a call with all these financial people and you explain what's going on with the earnings and what's going on with the stock price, some of which you can control and a lot of which you can't. And so what I learned a long time ago is excuses don't work. And the worst excuse you can give is one from the economy, because basically you're saying, it's not me. I can't, the hands off the steering wheel. I can't control this. And so when it comes to, or at that time came to the Great Recession, it would have been very easy to say, hey, we can't control this. Boy, the economy's in the tank. Whatever happens, we're just along for the ride. I think in our case, the recession was the absolute best thing that could have happened to us because it forced us to look inward and make sure that we had really tight unit level economics. We put in place a 36-month cash flow planner for our franchise owners so that we could show them how their business would cycle, because we have a very seasonal business being in youth sports. We have essentially 4 seasons. So the revenue comes in, and then it goes down. And revenue comes in, and it goes down. Well, the franchisees weren't managing their money that way. Mm-hmm. So long story short, it caused us to focus on managing and showcasing how franchise unit economics work in our model, and then being able to show them that we as a franchisor were taking meaningful steps to help them reduce their costs and put more money in their pocket. So that was a really great exercise for us, because then we also put some other metrics in place. We created a scorecard so everybody in the network could know where they stood in relation to their peers, so that they couldn't use the same excuse everybody else was. It's the economy. I can't market. I can't do this. And yet their peers were doing it.
Right.
And so using the scorecard gave us the ability to let them see where they were on the curve of their peers. And it changed our franchise business coach conversations and allowed us to coach more towards success. So those things absolutely helped us navigate through that.
I agree. I always say that the cash flow planner, what it did is it provided hope. It gave them a clear roadmap, but now it gave them hope in the face of all the negativity. I think that was a very big advantage for our franchisees. Now, to switch gears here for a second, though, during that same time period, though, selling franchises, otherwise known as franchise development, was an issue during that time period. We had come off the heyday of 2005, 2006, 2007, and we were selling franchises like crazy. Sort of similar to what's happening lately in franchise development across the industry. But, every franchisor has their ups and downs of selling franchises. Let's talk about your philosophy, because we did go from in-house. Hell, that as you said earlier, I sold franchises for us in the first few years. But we've done everything from in-house, remote franchise salespeople, and also outsourcing to FSOs, otherwise known as franchise sales organizations. What is your take on things? What do you think is the right method or right mix for a franchisor?
Boy, and we have gone full circle. We've tried all kinds of things that would work. And what I would say is it does differ by the type of franchisor or franchise system you represent. So we happen to be in youth sports. We're a service business, and we're in a category that people think they know, but they don't know how to do it as a living. And so the way our story has to be told is a little bit unique. And what we found in trying to outsource is that we couldn't get the same results as we could if we had someone that was actually dedicated to in sports. Because if you outsource to another organization, whether it's a broker organization or franchise sales, there's some that, like you say, are strictly FSO. They typically have a portfolio of brands that they're representing. People are human, and they're going to migrate to those concepts that are easier to sell. And ours, we found in relation to others, may not be quite as easy to sell. And therefore, we like taking more control over our sales process. So we've had in-house, we've gone to an FSO, we've done hybrid. But where we've ended up is actually having our own salespeople. I will tell you, I own this. I was late to accepting and acknowledging that you could have remote salespeople. I believe, that we should have all of our employees here locally, because we had such a strong corporate culture, and I didn't want to give up on that.
Mm-hmm.
But I will tell this to the entire audience: hire for the skill when it comes to your sales professionals, and they do not have to be in your backyard. They can sell beautifully by phone wherever they are, whether they're in Alaska or right next door. I was late to get there on that side, so I think we probably could have embraced that much sooner. So for us,
Yeah,
long-winded answer for us, we liked having the in-house sales.
I agree. I mean, I think we got there together. We realized that the challenge was we knew we turned down some really good people that just weren't going to relocate. But the culture to us was really important. And maybe we put too much of an emphasis on the in-house culture, and it was okay for them to be working remote. And that's okay. Inevitably, you found out through COVID that was the right answer for you, because right outside COVID, I mean, franchise development absolutely exploded for I9 Sports. Who saw that coming?
Exactly. In fact, we sold the number during COVID, which, everybody else was kind of on hold, and we continued to sell. And I think the reason for that is people had a lot of time to really dig in and think about what they wanted to do with the rest of their careers. It was a forced career reflection,
Mm-hmm.
on the part of many people. And I think they did the same kind of reset that I did, which was, can I envision myself doing what I'm doing at this point for the rest of my life? And will I feel good about it when I get to retirement? And, I did that old rocking chair test, and that's what got me out of the corporate path that I was in. I'm blessed that I had it, because it gave me a lot of skills, but I was not going to be happy continuing in that role. And I think a lot of people came to the same conclusion during COVID. So,
Yeah, well, franchising has definitely seen a resurgence of folks that are saying they don't want to work for anybody anymore. They want to own their own business. There's roughly 4,000 choices among franchise brands to choose from. From your perspective, Brian, what would you say if somebody's looking at buying a franchise, beyond the franchise agreement? What makes it a right fit? What are some of the things you think that somebody should be looking for when they're looking to become a franchisee?
well, Frank, I would put several things on the list. I think that the first and probably more obvious one is unit level economics. You're wanting to acquire this, whether you're going to operate yourself or whether, depending on the franchise concept, you might be an investor, but you're looking for a certain return on the money that you're putting in. So unit level economics, number one. The second thing I would urge someone to consider: is this going to be a sustainable opportunity? There's some opportunities that are really exciting, but they could be easily undermined by a competitive concept, or even by a product segment that could be replaced with a new technology that comes along in 4 or 5 years. So is this a sustainable opportunity? The third gets back to the mission and values. Does whatever this product and industry represent, does that align with my personal mission and values? Can I see myself feeling good about this going forward? And if I had to add a fourth, it's, do I like the people? I'm gonna, getting back to the marriage analogy, this isn't just dating someone. You're gonna get married to this organization for the term of the franchise agreement. Can I see myself working with these people day in and day out as the franchise or franchisee relationship?
Right. And franchisees also sometimes get caught up in the idea of what is the product or service that they're connected to, right? So we have this blessing and curse, I always say about I9 Sports, that it is sports. So people, the blessing is that they know something about sports. So they go, oh, I love it. I can't wait to be part of this. The curse is that it's sports and they know something about it. And if they get caught up in the actual gameplay, they get caught up in the rules of the game, they're focusing on the wrong thing, right? It's focusing on
Right.
the management, marketing, operations, finance, technology. Sports is the vehicle that we use to deliver that experience.
Exactly right. And I think that is part of what attracted a lot of people initially to I9 Sports, until we began to recognize there's a persona that goes along with that. And we kind of lovingly refer to that persona as sports guy.
Oh, yes.
It's the armchair quarterback who might have played in high school or college, who, like you say, knows the rules inside and out and can quote all kinds of sports, statistics and things, but that doesn't make him or her a wonderful business person.
Right.
And so we've gotten to the point at I9 Sports anyway, that we recognize the personas that are going to work well within our system. And we can tell people that really love the idea of sports and coaching. If you want to do that, be a coach. We've got volunteer positions. We'll give you a whistle and you can be a coach in the field, but that does not set you up to be a successful franchise owner.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group, LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.